I'm pretty sure you don't need me to tell you just how stacked next season is. We've got a whole bunch of sequels that a lot of us have been waiting quite a long time for, then more than a few new isekai that might be worth your attention. So even though returning shows like Overlord and DanMachi are probably going to be king, perhaps one of these new ones could also be interesting. Starting with the sequels, first we have the one that I'm sure we're all the most excited for. The direct continuation to Overlord, once again following Ainz and his unintentional quest for world domination. Because I did already make a video covering what to expect from it though, you can find a refresher for Season 4 using the link down below. It's a pretty comprehensive breakdown of where we're at in the story so far. If we're looking at the new season in terms of quality though, I think we can expect a few improvements from what we got back in Season 3. Yes, Madhouse is doing the animation once again, but the trailers seem to showcase a rather significant improvement to the overall style and quality. The CGI doesn't appear as unnatural, and all that Sakuga was shot here was actually quite impressive. Another sequel that a lot of us weren't expecting was the recently announced return for The Devil is a Part-Timer. 8 years later and we finally get to see Satan working his job at McDonald's again. As one of the first fantasy anime I'd ever watched, I do think I like it far more than I should, but there's just something oddly satisfying in seeing this demon lord try to do all these mundane tasks. It's not a series that deals with anything as serious as Overlord might, but it does have a unique comedic approach that not many other shows pull off very well. So if you're one of the few who hasn't watched the first season from back in 2013, then I highly recommend doing so before the next one comes out on July 14th. A quick thing to note about Season 2 though was that it seems the staff behind it is completely different from last season. No longer is Studio White Fox in charge of the animation, and both the director and producer are completely different now. So, if you're expecting a style and quality similar to what we got back in 2013, then you might be shocked to find things a little bit different. The next fantasy sequel on our list is a personal favorite of mine you know as DanMachi, an anime I find has always been pretty consistent. Sure, Season 2 may have been a little bit weak story-wise, but you can always count on JC's staff to deliver that high-quality animation, which is especially good now since we're getting to one of the best arcs in the entire series. If you don't remember from Season 3, the discovery of the Xenos was a whole aspect that changed the very way we perceived the dungeon. So, for this next arc to take us back to the dungeon adventures that started it all, then lead us to the long-awaited subplot focusing on Ryu, there's definitely a whole lot to make the story extremely interesting. That being the case, I honestly can't recommend enough catching up with this before the next season starts. It's the other series I plan on making videos for alongside Overlord. So, if anything, it's just another excuse to watch more of my content. Now, the last sequel on our list is the return of the dark fantasy Made in Abyss, a series that appears all cutesy on the outside, but is actually one of the more grim series you'll probably watch, ever. I mean, there's been more than a few fucked up scenes that's made even me grimace. So, if you're interested in uncovering more of what lies beyond the depths of the abyss, then you can watch the new season starting July 6th. Moving on to the new anime, first we have Studio Reverute's adaptation of the light novel, My Isekai Life. I gained a second character class and became the strongest sage in the world. Just like how the name suggests, it's a rather standard isekai revolving around a salaryman who becomes a monster tamer. Normally this job class would make adventuring rather difficult, but the slime he tames help him to become a sage as well, resulting in a powerful second job class that grants him these OP magical abilities. I wouldn't say it's anything particularly groundbreaking, but it does seem to fill the gap for that OP protagonist going on adventures anime. Now, this next isekai doesn't really have many trailers to go along with it, but with a title like A Harem in a Fantasy World Labyrinth, I'm sure you don't need me or anything else to tell you what to expect from it. What I will say that might make you a bit more intrigued though is that this ecchi type anime is being done by the same studio who did Interspecies Reviewers. So feel free to use that information any which way you feel like. An isekai that seems to break away from the more generic premise of the others is the adaptation of the manga Isekai Uncle. A comedic take different from many others, mainly because it focuses on the aftermath of being isekai'd. Rather than present the plot as the events of what happened in this new fantasy world, the anime instead shows how the uncle is after he returns from it. He awakes from a coma after 17 years, now possessing incredible magic and abilities from the world he'd been isekai'd into. So, as he recounts his time as this supposed hero to his nephew, he also tries to catch up on 2 decades of technological advancements, making for this entertaining dynamic between two very contrasting characters. I mean, it's not very often we get to see a protagonist actually make it back from being isekai'd. Now, the animation may not seem the very best, but trust me when I say that the best aspects lie in its comedy. It's truly a different approach to isekai that we've never seen before. An isekai I'm surprised isn't more popular than it is Studio Satellite's adaptation of Black Summoner. I mean, as a series that's coming from the same studio who brought us Hellsing Ultimate and Log Horizon, I do think Black Summoner might be one of the more average shows this season. The story itself is fairly basic as far as isekai go, but the main character is one that's both overpowered and competent. It's a combination of elements that make for an entertaining anime no matter how many times I see it. So think Konosuba if Kazuma was Kirito and every person to join his party was actually a capable adventurer. We then follow that group as they seek out all sorts of different adventures. It's not really the most revolutionary of concepts, but if you're looking for a new generic isekai that checks all the boxes, then this would definitely be the one to watch this season. Now, the last isekai on our list is the more wholesome one of Parallel World Pharmacy, a series revolving around this world-renowned medical researcher who one day works himself to death then finds himself reincarnated again. The thing about his new life though is that not only is he the child of a respected family of doctors, but his body is also host to the guardian deity of medicine, meaning he can now use magic to heal people as well. So, with the ability to diagnose people's illnesses practically instantly, they really made sure to make him OP in the way that best suits the theme of the show. He's pretty much your typical isekai protagonist, but instead of incredible powers used for combat, they're instead powers used for healing. It's the standard stuff, just with slight variations here and there. Switching over to the basic fantasy now, and what we have next is Kinsou no Vermeil, a school-based series involving a failing student who coincidentally comes across the very thing he needs to prevent him from failing. As one of the worst summoners at the Royal Academy of Magic, the protagonist just so happens to find a grimoire which lets him summon the devil, an incredibly powerful demon who'd been sealed away years ago. So, with this ancient demon now serving as his familiar, the story basically becomes the two of them climbing the ranks of the academy together. The last new series on our list isn't really one that's new at all. I'm sure many of you have heard of the web series RWBY, the Rooster Teeth production by Monty Ohm that put together one of the greatest fictional worlds I've ever had the pleasure of coming across. As a fan that's been watching since the first episode's release in 2013, it's extremely heartwarming to see it grow to the point that it's now getting its own anime. An anime I know for sure will be fantastic since none other than Studio Shaft is doing it. Plus, with a staff as talented as this, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if RWBY was to become one of the best anime this season. Like, not only do we have the directors responsible for Sangatsu no Lion and the Monogatari series, but we also have a script from the man behind Psycho-Pass 2 and 3, as well as the sound director who did 86, Mushoku Tensei, and Ear Lion April. So, if you've never had the chance to experience the fantastical world of RWBY, then now would definitely be the best time to do so. Everything from its immersive lore to highly character-driven subplots is honestly what makes it so good in the first place. I can only imagine what this new talented team of creatives can add to it. But yeah, that's pretty much every isekai and fantasy coming out next season. For the ones that don't fall into that category though, there's also Classroom of the Elite and Shadow's House, both of which are returning for a season 2. So it's pretty obvious that summer 2022 is likely going to be carried by its returning series. There's quite a few sequels that a lot of people have been waiting for. For me, you already know it's Overlord and DanMachi, but I'm also curious to know what you guys are looking forward to. So feel free to let me know in the comments down below. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!